DSCR Pre Approvals for long-term rentals. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Jeff Trevarthen, Jeff the Mortgage Pro. Hope you're doing really great today. Thanks so much for watching my video. I appreciate it. I get this question so often, and that is, how do you get pre-approved for a DSCR loan? Like, does it go through underwriting? Do we need to go really deep like that, like a conventional loan? And the answer is no, you don't. Before I get into it here, do me a huge favor. If you like these videos, go ahead and click that like button down below. And if you really like the videos, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. Okay, let's dive in right here to DSCR pre-approvals for long-term rentals. So let's start by saying if you go and you wanted to get approved for a conventional loan, what you'd have to do is submit all of your documentation. You need to do a loan application and things of that nature. Probably need to run credit. And then the most important part of a pre-approval is the income calculation. And everything else, we can kind of go off of what the numbers are that you tell us, but income is the one thing that's really tricky to calculate sometimes. So you'd have to go through, have it, sometimes it's a little tricky, sometimes it's even trickier, especially if you have tax returns and different write-offs and things of that nature. Businesses, things like those make it a little bit difficult to get pre-approved for a conventional loan. But with DSCR, it's slightly different. We don't need as much documentation. And the whole reason is that we're looking at the income of the property itself versus your actual personal income to determine what the property is. So this loan does not need to go through underwriting. It's really just a matter of looking at a couple things. So let's go through the process here of how you would get pre-approved for a DSCR loan. And then this is as if you were going to buy a long-term rental. Okay. Step number one would be to fill out a loan application. And the loan application is going to be the same loan application that you've probably filled out before if you've ever purchased a property with a conventional loan or an FHA loan or a VA loan or USDA loan or jumbo loan. All those applications are exactly the same. DSCR is no different. It's still going to ask you the same questions, and it's still going to ask you about your income, even though we don't need your income for the DSCR loan. So you can leave that spot blank when you're filling out the loan application to do that. We're going to collect some initial documentation from you. And since this is based off of the property's income, we don't need things like pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, things of that nature. So that's the great thing about this type of loan. It's a little bit less documentation. But what things we're going to look for is that we're going to definitely need your last 2 months worth of asset statements. And the asset statements are also called bank statements. And we use those to determine how much do you have enough money for down payment, cash to close, and reserves. So that's why we're going to ask for the bank statements. We're going to look for a copy of your photo ID. So whether that's a driver's license, a passport, things of those nature, along those lines, those will help us determine your eligibility for the loan. If you have properties that you already own that are financed, so if you are going to buy an investment property, we're going to need the mortgage statements on those properties that are financed. And in some DSCR lenders, we don't need all this stuff, but I like to collect everything up front so that we don't have to keep coming back to you for more and more info. So the hardest part about getting pre-approved is just getting all the paperwork in there, in all honesty. Things that we don't need, again, I'll just mention those. Don't need tax returns, don't need W-2s, don't need pay stubs, don't need anything along those lines to help us determine what your income is for the DSCR loan, because again, we're looking at just the property's potential rental income of it to be able to help us buy that property. And then the third step that we're going to need to do, we're going to need to run credit. Credit is important because it helps us with pricing and it helps us determine how much money you're going to need to put down. So usually if you have a 680 credit score or better, we probably get away with 20% down if you're purchasing a property, even if you're buying your first investment property. If you're less than 680, then you're most likely looking at 25% minimum, maybe even up to 30 to 35% down as well. So credit is really important. We usually do a soft pull for purchases. And the reason being is that we don't know when you're going to buy a property. Like you could buy a property tomorrow and then we'd still have to most likely run a hard credit inquiry on there. But sometimes you might be 4 months out before you actually find a property that you're going to buy with the DSCR purchase loan. So soft inquiry is usually the number one thing that we do. And then we'll try to give you an opt-out form so that if we do have to run a hard credit pull, you won't get inundated with what are called trigger leads, which is a big, big stain on the mortgage industry, I would say, where the credit bureaus sell your data and people buy that data. And then that's why you get a whole bunch of calls sometimes when people run your credit, which I don't like and I don't advocate for. I always try to advocate against it, and I'll try to help you opt out if I possibly can some way. And then when you're searching for a property, the target price point is definitely necessary for us to be able to help you determine how much we can get you pre-approved for a DSCR loan. And the reason why is that if you find a property that is more than you have for down payment, cash to close, and reserves, then you don't qualify for that one. So that's the last thing that what I would want you to do is to go out there and try to find a property and it's not something that is within the budget of how much you have for down payment, cash to close, and reserves. So it's not going to work if we do it that way. So we're going to try to pick a target price for you. We can figure out a maximum typically based on your assets, and we can work backwards from there if you don't know what your target price point is. So just let us know when we're getting the pre-approval process going. And then also, like I would say equally important is when you're trying to determine the rental income of a property, what do you need to look at? There's a couple tools that you can use. Number one is Zillow. You can look at a rentals estimate. Sometimes they have that on there, sometimes they don't, but that gives us kind of an idea, or at least a ballpark of what we think the income might be on the property. There's another one called rentometer.com. That's a website that is a subscription-based website, and you can go in there and enter your rental income, and oftentimes it will be pretty close to being accurate to whatever the market rent is going to be on that property. And then another one, and probably my favorite, is called Rentcast. That's another subscription-based website that you can use to determine what the rental income is. That seems to be the most accurate that I found. And ultimately, remember, when we're doing a DSCR loan, the market rent is going to be determined by an appraiser who's going to do a rental survey on the property to determine what the rental income is. And that's going to be the number that we use for the calculation purposes of doing the loan. That is not necessarily the number that you can rent it out for. You can probably rent it out for more than that, because I've noticed they tend to be on the conservative side when we're determining the rental income through the market rent. But in any event, if you follow those steps, you do a loan application, we get the appropriate documentation, we run a soft pull on your credit, you can get your pre-approval pretty quickly, usually within 24 to 48 hours, as long as we have that information. Then you can get out there and get shopping on your property. So if this sounds like something you would want to do, I would love to chat with you about it. Buying investment properties is a really cool process, and I've helped a lot of people do that. So go ahead and click on my calendar link down below in the description, and let's set up an appointment and chat about your pre-approval for your investment property. Thanks a lot for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Have a good day. Bye.